We have been working as a group that has been researching ways in which community organizations and arts organizations partner with universities in sustained ways. And for the past couple of years, we've been doing research in New Orleans about promising practices for reciprocal engaged community arts partnerships. And today we're proud to show you, we're going to be showing the results of the first couple of years of our collaboration in the form of film and discussion. So I'll say a little bit about the panelists, and then I want to just introduce some of the things that have come up and that are going to come up in the conversation today, and then I'll let them go. So our panelists are first Cheryl Ajura-Tutu, who's Associate Vice Chancellor for Global Inclusion and Engagement and Professor of Anthropology at University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. And for the past, since 2006, Cheryl has been running a program, University of Milwaukee in New Orleans. It's a really amazing, sustained response to the storm and the disaster. And as you'll see through her discussion, it's the kind of program that's been able to become really grounded in New Orleans because they learned from their mistakes, learned from their process, learned from their relationships that they've built over the course of many years, and are now expanding to bring some New Orleans students to Milwaukee to have a partnership that is reciprocal geographically as well as in the city of New Orleans. Our next panelist is going to be Ron Bechet. He's Imagining America board member. He is the chair of the art department at Xavier University of Louisiana. He was involved with and led the Home New Orleans project, which was a kind of really well-known project that after Katrina connected university students from 3 local universities to community arts projects in the citywide network of artists, scholars, and organizers using culture to nurture a just recovery process. And since then, he's continuing to work on Home New Orleans with classes that connect Tulane and Xavier students with community arts projects around New Orleans. And he also runs the Mardi Gras Indian Arts program and directs the community arts program at the art department at Xavier. And now, next we have Carol Beefel, who's the executive director of the Ashe Cultural Arts Center in New Orleans. She's the lead faculty also with College Unbound, a new 1-year-old, or year and a month or so old, community-based college program with partners with Roger Williams University. This is increasing. College Unbound at Ashe is increasingly known, like really rapidly. It's getting a reputation for a super innovative curriculum that builds a fully equitable partnership between the knowledge produced at a community organization and university knowledge, building together to see what kind of education can happen when universities and community arts programs co-create the curriculum. And then also we're going to have Adam Bush, who's a founding curriculum director of College Unbound and one of the faculty there. He's going to join us in a few minutes. He's also the page director. He runs the Page Scholars, so he's just getting their panel started, and then he'll join us. And I'm a postdoc at Tulane, and I've had the pleasure of just learning from these amazing people. Oh, I forgot one person, because we had Cedric McClure, who's here in the place of Ruth Janish Lake, who's part of our Imagining America Collaboratory, but Ruth is unfortunately ill and couldn't make the conference, so Cedric very generously agreed to come and talk about their work at McAllister College with the Bonner, first-year Bonner Scholars Program, which has had a sustained, also repeated engagement in New Orleans, where they bring down freshmen and use what they learned from a program. Is it 2 weeks or a week-long program in New Orleans to sort of build up from their college curriculum. So he's here the last minute going to talk about that because Ruth wasn't able to make it, and we're so grateful to him for being here. And you'll see these programs all in the film that we made, which Cheryl helped direct and kind of make sure that we had it ready for the conference. It's a film that kind of features the different accomplishments and challenges that went into creating long-term sustained engagement in New Orleans. So I just wanted to share a little bit about why I got involved in the collaboratory and my role here. Micah Salkin, who's a grad student at Brown, and I both wanted to join the collaboratory to learn, basically because we want to be doing this work in the future. And we start out as page scholars, and we saw in these people I just introduced to you really excellent role models for us of ways to kind of veer away from the model that I know I was trained in a model of thinking about service that was about creating a project that was on the university calendar, you know, like a semester-long or year-long project where students would engage. And observing that in lots of different universities where I've worked, and then comparing it to these long-term sustained programs, it just seems so much powerful what they're doing. One of the things they can do is that they can build true relationships, like really lasting relationships, where when they start to make decisions about the programming of the programs for the students and for the community, everybody has a voice at the table because there's a sense of trust. And people feel like if you're there for a long time and you're not going anywhere, people can, the community partners involved feel like they can trust the university partners and vice versa and really exchange and share ideas. So we've seen that happening a lot in these programs, that the sense of trust also allows the students to come into the community arts engagement process. I feel like it allows the students to come in as better partners because they're coming into relationships that are sustained and that are healthy. They're coming into a knowledge base that's built not just from the classroom, but where the program and the curriculum that they're in is developed from the community. So they're entering into these programs and they're gaining so much more. So that's what the film is going to talk about. And I think one final thing that this work really addresses well and that we can talk about as a group afterwards is the question of institutional racism, because having that trust and having students enter into programs where there are long-standing relationships that are healthy and functioning between the university and the community program allows students to work, allows you to do more, to teach students to confront entrenched forms of racism in the community and in the university campuses. It allows you to have conversations that go beyond just the surface abstract concepts of inequalities that exist. It allows students to actually take those concepts and apply them to their own life, and so when they go back to their university community, they're able to see with new eyes and make change. So we're going to start with Ron and Carol are going to talk about Ashe College Unbound. We'll show a little bit of their work on video as well. Who's going to come up?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We meant for this just to be somewhat of a conversation as well with Carol and I. And Carol and I, if you don't know about Ashe Cultural Arts Center in New Orleans, I'm going to let Carol talk about the history a little bit about Ashe. But we have worked with different kinds of projects in different ways. And actually one of the projects that Catherine mentioned, the Home New Orleans project, Carol also helped with that as well. And that, just to, I don't want to correct you, but just to say that that was led by a large number of people, and one of them is here, Amy Corrence, who I'm happy to see here and miss greatly, was also one of the collaborators at Home New Orleans. And the first time we did the class, Amy was one of the co-professors in that class, and also worked with Carol in other projects as well.
In many ways, kind of Amy's the godmother of the, like she's the door opener that kind of led us to where we are today, and really offers a model for us as we're talking about this university community kind of connection and how to be able to have it have more parity and all of that. And so she thought that our words were and our experiences were important for people to hear, and so she made opportunities for that. And then she moved it to being able to essentially capture it in kind of in a book, and the book is the thing that brought Adam and I together. So there is some serendipity about this, and there's also some intentionality that really kind of brought us to this, that opened the door that kind of led to the Ashe College Unbound experience.
And what's beautiful about College Unbound and what Carol was talking about about Amy's book, which is civic engagement in the wake of Katrina, and it was actually co-authored with George Sanchez. And so I just wanted to mention Nils as well, who was also somewhat part of this project at Home New Orleans with The Porch, which is another one of the cultural grassroots organization that was building at the same time as this Home New Orleans project. And Nils brought his students down and worked with, at the time, the University of Kansas, to work with architecture projects. But I think one of the things that we recognize, and as I matured in dealing with who I am as a professor and sharing with young students, is that I don't know everything. I don't have a chance to pretend to know everything. But there are other people, like Carol, as a community scholar. And this idea for me became really significant to understand that there are people who have been out there for a long time doing this that don't necessarily exist in academia, but have the knowledge that our students need. And so to make those connections is extremely important in what I do with students. And so that connection for us has been really important for students to understand as well, that there are other ways that you can attain knowledge and other ways that you can get the skills that you need, not just through the sort of university standard courses that we have.
Okay. I think the thing that I guess is my starting point would be to talk a little bit about what Ashe aspires to, and I talk about it like that because Ashe is like kind of people, which is that it evolves. You know, it's not a static thing. It's constantly interacting with the community, and so we put forward a mission that calls us to essentially take community culture and art and kind of mix it together, and our work agenda evolves out of that. And then that further we use the strategy of art and culture as the way in which we kind of come at it. So we're not doing social work, so to speak, that we are finding a way to be able to make the connections to the anthropological concept of culture. So roles, rules, ritual, lifestyle, traditions, you know, and that we're trying to figure out how do we manage to serve whatever is going on with people, you know. And so it really challenges us to constantly be thinking. And one of our thought partners is really Ron. You know, whenever we're trying to figure out kind of what are some next steps, what are some other doors we ought to be opening, we spend a lot of time on the phone trying to build the foundations and clear out the clutter so that we can figure out like what is the thing that's just a great idea and what's the thing that works out to be something that's worth doing. And so kind of given that, what I kind of deal with kind of coming to kind of the end of my term, I'm not there yet, but I realize the gray hair on my head tells me I don't have as much time as I got, you know. So that I have to think a little bit about next generation leadership. And when I look around our community, the young folks who are really doing the work, they lacked something. The thing that they lacked was a degree. And a degree, we've got like 4 master degree people on our staff now. And the chances of any of them being able to aspire to becoming executive director, the board was not going to do it, you know. And so rather than fight with the board about seeing somebody's excellence, I've been kind of trying to figure out how do we manage to support people in being able to get what it is that they need so that what they don't have doesn't wind up being the focus of attention of a conversation, but rather their record of what they do have and what they do bring to bear. So this had been a part of putting some of the gray hairs on my head for a minute. And when in the door walked Adam Bush, simply to say hello, because he had been one of the editors for the book that Amy and George had done. And in the exchange of him saying who he was and what he did, and me doing the same, I discovered we both had a history. Mine is Upward Bound and College Bound. That's what we were doing in those days. And his was, of course, the work that he's been doing with Imagine in America and with college Unbound at Roger Williams. And I thought it was great and all of that and left it alone. But as ideas do, it started cooking. And about 2 weeks later, I yelled out, I said, Adam, I said, do you think y'all might be interested in doing some of this work in a distance format? And his thing, of course, was, why not? You know, and that literally was the way that Ashe College Unbound was, you know, kind of brought to life. Ashe is a word that comes from the vocabulary of the folks of West Africa, and it means literally the ability to make things happen. And we really take that on as a mission. And this is a moment when I really felt like our mission and our challenge was to figure out how to make something happen here. And the kind of the commitment to kind of this equal partnership style of work between university and community that Adam is so committed to, and our desire to really figure out what are some new doors that can be opened for not just this class of like 11 or 12 folks, but for lots of folks, because there are folks who work in the social activist area who are in the identical same situation. And so being able to really figure out like what's the product that works for them in terms of being able to kind of improve their way of life. And like artists, they tend to be folks who are lifelong learners. They're constantly having to keep up. They're not folks that get a degree and just kind of go on and figure like they got something locked down and they can go on. So they're constantly having to update information, challenge what it is they think and believe, be in vigorous dialogue about where they stand on stuff, you know. And so their lifestyle already is a commitment to lifelong learning. They've been trained and overtrained, do you know what I'm saying? And they've also done some college. And so all of that combined should mean something in the pursuit of getting a degree. And so we created a curriculum that is going to give from Roger Williams a degree in community and cultural development. And we're making, and we're creating the curriculum to be able to respond to their areas of work. Almost, we've got like duplicates, like people who are two folks in one area, but we've got everything from the healing arts to teaching that's represented there. And so we're constantly pulling from both life and what it gives us, learning, you know, and what people need to know. And then an interesting part that we have made a requirement, which is what we call personal infrastructure. Because this is also a part of what it is that people who are 30-something are faced with. It's a limitation factor. And so it's the fact of not having your financial house in order. It's the fact of, by virtue of having been paid very small amounts of money, that you've got to kind of really, you know, what appears to be like a personal crisis all the time. And so we have really made this a part of what it is that we get worked on and as well. And you don't get the degree without working on all of that, you know. And in some instances, that's the hardest part of the curriculum for everybody. But there are things that they could be doing that they can't do because that part of their house is not in order. So we would not be doing a service to just simply give them a degree and say, okay, now you can go out and face the world fully understanding that there is this other aspect of work that needs to be done. We meet twice a week for supposedly 2 hours. It's usually more like 3. And they really kind of, you know, make that a triple commitment because in terms of what are the work that they've got to do to be able to be ready for, classes. And we've got a very generous and loving collection of professors at other universities who have decided to weigh in. And so we have folks that have come in via video conferencing, and we've got a collection of folks in the city who are kind of our adjunct faculty. Adam and I are the main faculty, and so I'm there almost every time. I'm not there today, but and then he's there on the phone or looking like he says, "Am I the big Buddha in the room?" on the screen. And it has been just a marvelous thing to see what happens when you slow things down you truly choose to make an investment in leadership and in community, and not from this broad kind of fashion, but really taking a given person and seeing who they are, what they're doing, and help them to reach for that next peg, that next leg that they want to do, you know. And I think Roger Williams is happy with it. We've had everybody other than the president to come down. We've had the dean, we've had, you know, what is it called? The Big Picture, which is Big Picture Learning, because they're doing similar work with high schools as well. And so we've had everybody to kind of come down, and we're looking forward to 2013 when we graduate our first class.
Question about I guess the brass tacks, bottom line. Students somehow have to pay for this.
Absolutely.
And so how have you managed to get students involved?
So what we did is we made a commitment, kind of because this was like, God, this is really, you know, this is really a risk that everybody's taking. And so we took on the thing of fundraising for the first year. And people responded. Some of it was like magical money. HBO had been in New Orleans, and we looked up, and there was a check from HBO that Spike Lee had directed to us. We didn't understand why. We kept trying to figure out why, and I said, forget it. Probably just take it. You know, you don't have to find out why. Say thank you to the big, you know, the big deans in the sky or whatever. And so that became our first scholarships. And then using one of the devices that are available to us, which is IDAs, we then talked to J.P. Morgan Chase, who was really excited about the prospect of not being asked to do operations money from us. And so they put some money down, and the students only had to come up with a grand. You know, and it became a struggle for some of them, and some of them are still cleaning up that that piece of debt that they happen to have. I should went on ahead and paid the bill, and they're really returning the money to us. They are part of the personal infrastructure was necessary because several of them have the capacity to have both Pell money and to be able to make make loans, and they couldn't do any of that if they hadn't done their taxes or any of that stuff. So that's part of what they're doing. But today, as we're sitting here, they're doing their second garage sale in front of Ashe. They did one last week. They've done fundraisers and that kind of thing. So they are having to take on some responsibility as well. And one of our, I really wanted to try to fundraise and to kind of let them focus on self because they hustle so much all the time. But one of our faculty mentors said, the challenge, she says, I'm buying in, and the challenge I'm putting on you guys is that you're going to come up with 11 students and that you're not going to make this a free program. She said, because there's something that happens when you do that. There's something that happens when you do that that devalues the importance of the thing. And so we've been working with them and making it a conversation, so that it's not one of those things that's like the unknown embarrassment that we do not speak of, and so when it comes time to talk about personal infrastructure, we have a faculty member whose whole job is to walk with, push, pull, assist them in doing, because this is like the biggest boogeyman that they've ever had to face. And they're adults, and it's the unkempt piece of their life. And so the whole notion of having people they respect see it is first a problem. And then secondly, it's disempowering in having to do that. And then it depends on really how much this has been a challenge for you. For some people have just lived the cash economy, and so they don't worry about it, But for people who've had no, this is something that could really shut you down, And so we need not look at this any different than we would some of the other kinds of emotional struggles that folks go through, which we give, a different kind of attention to. This is one of the imbalances, do you know what I'm saying, is that if you are a marginalized person, then everything that goes wrong in your life in a certain kind of way is your fault, and it's an absence of something that's, that you don't have that you should have. And so we don't want to have this wind up being. We want them to even be able to have an empowering conversation about being in this situation as they're kind of moving forward. And so we spend a lot of time in gnashing teeth and pulling hair ourselves, because it presses our buttons too, you know. I've disclosed with them instances when I was younger, when I was, you know, was struggling in the same situation, even older, because when, you know, taking on Ashe, we didn't have a budget when we first got started. We had an idea and a commitment. And part of what had to be put on the altar of sacrifice was the notion of personal security. And so we, you know, all of that's out there so that you can understand that everybody's story on this is not as good as they look. Folks know how to fake it till they make it. And they got a lot of fakers walking around. And so you need not, be, you know, just do that. You can do that well. The great thing is to be able to know that you have made it, however cost the amount of what it is that you have, that you've worked it out so that you're not preventing yourself from being able to get things. So that's how we, you know, so that's why personal infrastructure is so important. That, planning, all of these things are things that you got to do before you get out of the course. You don't get the degree until you know in the next 5 years what kind of things you want to do, and you got some, you know, some kind of plan together on how you manage to do it. You've got your mentors lined up, that you got somebody working with you financially, somebody working with you on your, you know, and that kind of stuff. So it's really about being able to really honor the strength of this leadership and being able to position it in a stronger fashion to be able to do work moving forward.
Right. And it seems too that the students, I've had a chance to meet them obviously, and
Yeah.
that they are leaders themselves and have been leaders in the community in a lot of cases. And this program, this unique experience for them too, is also about developing their leadership
Absolutely,
further.
absolutely. So it's interesting. We were starting off with like we said we were going to try to get about 12. One student made the decision to go up to Providence and to be in a program with financial aid, which is fine. And so then we had, and we had like 20-some folks we were talking to, but as it became clear, because we did an orientation semester, which was just purely about meeting every 2 weeks and talking about what this was going to be, so that it became really real about what the implication of time commitment was going to be. All of these are folks who are trying to live, you know, bigger than 24 hours a day lives. And so when you're talking about, you know, 6 to 7 hours in class, and then maybe building on top of that anywhere from 10 to 14 hours, you know, you got to find the time, because it's not there. It's not just sitting there. And so we had a semester where we kind of, you know, kind of worked on that. And of course, Adam and I were kind of the guys there. So we've got people who want to get into the next cycle, and we're bold enough to be thinking that there's going to be one. So we've decided that we no longer are appropriate for that curriculum to be the leaders, because we have not been there, and we don't know how to get through it. And so we really are pulling from the current class, folks who are going to be the leaders, and we're just really going to mentor them through the process of that orientation semester. We've already thought through what the content is, but the notion of there's a way in which you have to kind of connect this stuff so that people get it, that part of the mentoring work and all, we're really going to assign to, you know, we've talked to some of the students to be able to take leadership in terms of being able to do that. We see that happening more and more as the program kind of moves on. Clearly, I'm not doing 21 hours, but I'm getting close to doing like 15 or so a week, which is a major challenge for me, given that the institution is not paying me to be a faculty member here. It's paying me to be the director of the organization. And so, and Adam is, I think he'd be a triplet, because I don't understand how he can be as attentive to not only programmatic requirements, but to the individual requirement of students. I have never in my life really seen the kind of attention with the challenge of space, because he's not in the places that the students are all the time. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, so I think both of us need to be able to get to the point where we're looking just at ACU as the program and working on it, and not having to be so much an integral part of it happening. But until that happens, we both understand that, you know, the time that we have to give up, the pressure that we live under, it's worth it, because we are convinced it's a door that we're opening that that not a lot of people are trying to open, in New Orleans anyways, and that it may be a door that's not just for culture bearers, artists, and social activists. It may be a door for other folks as well. And so in the conversation that's about being able to be credentialed and ready in a world that we weren't all necessarily trained to be able to be, you know, active and operative in, that it's one of the ways that we can look at being able to help people to kind of recycle themselves around and to be able to sit in a place where they happen not to feel so badly. In my earlier history, when it was really very, you know, made me very nervous, I worked in a city college at Loyola University, and I can remember, and it was mostly policemen and firemen who were in those courses, because they were taking care of getting them degrees, you know. And so I have that too in my history, in terms of really understanding that there are ways in which we value people we value, that we work hard, we think creatively, and we make things happen for them. And we know that people in America love policemen and firemen. And 25 years ago, they were putting funds together, in fact, so that they didn't have to worry about Pels and all. Their money came straight from the government, and that they were able to manage to go. And so I'm really happy for the history, because it really gives me some understanding of where this could go. And in a world where we're talking about training and teaching and being able to improve the educational outcomes, and we know that once a mom, the higher the mom goes in her education, the more education the child is likely to be able to get. And so being able to find ways to be able to bring people back to the classroom, and to have the classroom be in very unlikely places, and have the conversations be not about just great scholars who've written, but what is happening on the front pages and what it means when it's pitched against what the scholars thought and felt, and all of that, that it really makes a very animated learning environment. And we're really excited about the prospect that I'm really happy that I think we're going to nurture our 11 people through. But I am now as happy about the fact that we may be turning a light on in a room that was dark, or opening a door that we didn't see before as well.
I can't let you get out of here without talking a little bit more about what Ashe does in terms of community development, like Main Street, like what's going on with Aretha Castle Haley,
Sure.
Boulevard, and using culture as a tool in terms of building those initiatives.
So I guess, you know, you might call us, we were the scouts, if we were to use the Mardi Gras Indian terminology. We were the ones that went first onto a boulevard that, like so many across America, at one time had been a very high, active economy. It was one of the alternate main streets, one of the alternate commercial districts for the city, and was particularly active because it was also the alternative place where people who were not welcomed on Canal Street, which was our main street, were able to go. And so it has a history in the race history of New Orleans as well. And then, like so many places around around the country rather, you know, the kind of the design for major cities started changing. Suburbia happened. Folks started moving to the suburbs. You know, racial lines became a way in which, you know, white folks moved out, black folks and brown folks stayed in, and so at the time it was called Drive Street, and then it was named Aretha Castle Haley Boulevard after a major shero in the civil rights movement named Aretha Castle Haley, and when we got there in 1998. Sex workers, drug abuse, you know, was just rampant up and down the street. When you woke up in the morning, people woke up on the streets. You know, folks had to get them up and to move them out of the way. And we were comfortable kind of going there because, you know, we really understood the power of culture. You know, the power of being able to really, that namaste thing, to be able to see someone and to be able to see their humanity in however it presents itself, you know, and to be able to honor that. And so we began working along with churches who were also there. And we make a mistake sometimes when we relegate all of the folks who are in organized religion to kind of a far-right mission, because a lot of folks who are very committed to their religion are really doing the best that they can to be able to follow these tenets that these religious books have been putting forward for centuries. And so people were trying to feed the hungry, they were trying to, you know, clothe folks who weren't, they were trying to take care of folks who were sick, they were trying to make people safe when they weren't. And so we kind of got together, and I guess the first foundation that saw potential there was the Casey Foundation. And so we began thinking and dreaming about what our boulevard could wind up being. And we moved on getting it established. We moved on resisting making it a historic one, because that is a dog whistle race word there. And you don't know it, but it's about being able to bring in both rich people and generally white people. So we fought against that. We resisted it. And what we did is we wanted it to be a cultural corridor. That meant that it would not have all of these expensive ways of renovating and all of that assigned to it. So we were successful in accomplishing that. So we're a cultural district. And then we made it a cultural district dedicated to African and Caribbean art and culture, because despite the presence of that all over New Orleans, there isn't any place other than the Boulevard where that is the thematic feature of what it is that's going on. And so we have an Irish channel, you know, but we didn't have any place, you know. We have Treme because Treme was one of the first black communities in the, you know, in America, but we don't have a place that was committed to culture like the Boulevard is. And then we just began doing what it is that people have done for all eternity, which is we gathered. You know, we found ways to be able to bring people together, to see who was there, to get to know each other, and to enjoy what it is that music and eating together and getting to know each other can generate. And out of that, we began to make connections with both our neighbors as well as other organizations in the community. And organizations began to be formed. One that was an organization of organizations, and in time, one that was an organization of residents. And then all the little neighborhood associations started coming up. And our job has been really about the whole notion of using kind of the devices of creativity, you know, so using film and dance and theater and, you know, writers and all of that, bringing them together and bringing this hodgepodge of people together to hear ideas that sometimes are disturbing, to talk about things that often you only get to talk about with people who look and think just like you, and to find ways to be able to make it more possible for people to take on the things that they need to take on in their lives. So a regular week for us has Monday and Thursday evenings where we have Sisters Making a Change. This was about, first of all, understanding that a family goes, particularly around eating, the way the woman in the household decides that it's going to go. So what we did is we took dance, which is in New Orleans, I don't know about other places, but in New Orleans, probably once a day you can be presented with the opportunity to dance. We literally dance in the streets in New Orleans. And so our thinking was that people did not shy away from the opportunity, but chose to take it, that we'd be stepping into a greater level of physical activity for ourselves and all. But we teach diasporan dance. So everything from hip hop belly dance to line dancing to African to salsa to samba, you know, all around the world. So we teach dance, and the women love it. They love the opportunity to get it right, because that's part of what keeps people from getting up. They feel like they're gonna look awkward. So they wanna be able to, have that, they wanna get their wiggle on and want the wiggle to be just right. And then what we do is we feed them what we know they like, but we feed it to them differently than maybe they would have chosen to cook it. So some of the things that they love that would have fatty meats in it, we choose not to have meat in it at all. Or we choose to use a different kind of meat than the one that they might choose to have and all. And then the third piece is about really helping them to interpret all of the health information that gets thrown at them and gets changed from one month to the next. And so we have very dedicated attendance, anywhere from 25 to 30 folks. Mondays and Thursdays, they come. And they're very identified in terms of having done that. On Wednesdays, we have the barbershop, because we're also working along with the big collaborative that's really focused on black males and black fathers. And so the barbershop is just that. It's kind of the guys coming together and dealing with their issues. So they don't have dance and all of that other stuff, but they've got issues of their own that they have to deal with. On Saturdays, we have the Kaumba Institute, which is when we're working with our kids. And we use the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, which is where people may know that. And so unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, I'm forgetting the big one, creativity, and then faith. And so these are the 7 principles through which all of their lessons are taught. And we have a multidisciplinary, so they're dancing, doing photography, doing textile art, doing theater, doing spoken word, they're doing all of that. But the faculty is helping them to distill and to essentially to lay a strong bottom to their value system. And so it's real strong values clarification. We work with the elders once a week. And so they've got a whole dance performance thing that they're doing as well. And then on top of that, we've got touring theater works, which are all original works that have been created by folks, including, I met last night with one of our friends and partners, Eve Insler. So Eve came down, and together we put together a piece called Swimming Upstream, which has toured portions of the country. We did our fabulous weekend 2 years ago where we did New Orleans on Friday and the Apollo on Monday, and I don't know if we'll ever top that. But we try to look at both the challenges and the victories of the community, and we try to immortalize it in the lessons so that people have an ability to be able to learn. Because sometimes when we objectify this stuff, we can see more than when we try to describe it while we're inside of it. And so that's what our life is like. We're doing that. We're participating. I'm currently the president of the Merchants and Business Association. We've done so well now that the Southern Food and Beverage Museum, which is really a major institution, a cultural institution in New Orleans, it was in what was our Riverwalk. And so Riverwalk is being repurposed. They have to find someplace else to go, and they decided to come to our boulevard, which we are really very happy about, but it also is a signal to us. It's a signal to us that the people are starting to see us, despite our additional problems with being an inner city community, as mainstream. And so gentrification has become a major, major issue. And so the whole notion of how do you continually negotiate the kind of the becoming of the metaphysical of a community. You know what I'm saying? And we're not looking for folks in the community. Come on down, Adam. We're not looking for people in the community to lay down and die because we were there first. That's not the piece. But we are not also looking for them to come in and to determine that now that, it's like we got it now and we're going with it. We, y'all did your part, we kind of going with it. And so it's constantly trying to essentially have us all be in a place of regard and respect, and to continually negotiate the power dynamic that kind of comes along, comes along with that.
And Carol just mentioned the tip of the iceberg as what goes on at Ashe. I mean, you can walk in any time and everything is going on. I won't say something is going on. The work with the brown community, black and brown community.
Absolutely.
Work with the Jewish community.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of work that she hasn't mentioned, and it's all done through culture. the idea of the food that.
Oh yeah, well that was a big thing, you know, it's a big thing because when you control full culture and art, then all of a sudden you've picked up anywhere from 15 to 25% people who have diet restrictions, folks who are vegetarian or whatever. And so that was that's one of the major things inside of culture is food, right? So the whole notion, and so inside of our family, the Ashe family, the whole notion of like switching from white rice to brown rice, to being certain that people who come do not wind up with iceberg lettuce and tomato as all they can eat because everything else has either dairy or meat product in it, you know. And so, you know, the whole challenge of kind of walking the walk that we talk about is like just a whole nother level, you know, kind of the work because what we aspire to for our community, and we mean the world, but the one that we can do something about is the one that we happen to be a part of, which is Central City. And so, you know, being available, being at the table. Often said, if you are not at the table, you sometimes have to worry about whether you're on the menu. And we are for sure always thinking about that. I know I always am. When it works out that you hear that a meeting was held and you weren't invited to it, you know, you want to know why. And the other thing that happens, of course, is that, you know, you have a tension in the organization. And the decision about the thing that is in tension happens to be made the time when somebody on the other side happens not to be there, or that you happen not to be there. So the whole dynamic of aspiring to democratic process and all is something that you gotta really monitor, and you gotta, you know, you can't like be, you know, nose down to the grind just working on the things you love doing, that you really have to. And that there's something to be said for citywide, but people don't live in a city, they live in a neighborhood. You know, and that's the place that you can really make your, you know, your power is most asserted is in that place. I had an opportunity to kind of be a culturalist on a project that was having to do with reinventing the river. And it was amazing to me how people who lived next to the river thought the river belonged to them. You know, it's like that what they wanted to have done was because their house was there, and it's as if the river, as the Mississippi River doesn't impact everybody in New Orleans. So, I mean, you have to really kind of be at the table to kind of allow, like, logic to prevail. Because sometimes people in their very small way of looking at me and mine and what affects me will often kind of go off into a zone that you have to sit and wonder. You know, you have to just simply wonder how could they even speak this publicly? And you know, it had to be going. My mom used to say sometimes things come out your mouth that you don't run it by your brain. And so that's what I really think. You know, that they just didn't run it. They didn't run it by their brain. It just was out before the brain got a chance to do its check on it. You know, so being, you know, it's like if you're going to be a community-based cultural anything, then the first place that you ought to be able to have some influence ought to be in the community that you live in. And that you should not ever forget that. And you should not ever become so citywide or so national that you lose the ability to be able to carry your head up and inside of the neighborhood. That people got to continually see you as a resource, as a contribution, as available to them at the neighborhood level. And that is the foundation. It's the only foundation that you can manage to really exist over a long time on.
Yeah, that's great words to end on.
We haven't shown the videos yet.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Yeah, we can do them. Well, let's hear from Adam. What I did is I just talked about Ashe and talked a little bit about how we met and talked a little bit more about Ashe and then you walked in the door.
I told him about our meet cute, how we got together.
Yeah, I told him about that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Papa Bear. I'm Mama Bear.
I mean, there's that Ellen Disneyaki quote that's about how art makes the important visible. And I think what Carol does, what Ashe does, what culture does is to make the important sustainable. And so I mean, I walked in the middle of your Ashe talk, but I think that that's a lot of the work that you've done through the organization is to create those spaces to sustain the things that are important. So Ashe College Unbound grew out of really this conversation about what does it mean to both recognize that work, that culture sustaining that's happening and that the organization has been doing, that individuals have been doing, and how can Ashe sustain itself by making sure the personal infrastructure is there to run the organization and take the organization into new directions. And so it was kind of this like awesome, beautiful first conversation that then Carol called me 3 nights later after a dream, and we kind of went from there.
I didn't tell them what the dream was.
Okay. And in a lot of ways, right, what Martha was saying about Ashe, like places like Ashe are higher ed spaces. They're spaces of higher ed learning. What Ashe College Unbound is it's a way to credentialize and degree that, and through that process, through the design of that curriculum, help to build capacity in a new way in the organization too. So it's really trying to smush any division that there was or could be or normally is between the campus, community, degree, partner, faculty, student, worker, place, all that kind of stuff, and throw it out the window and really trying to say there is really important work being done there that should be credentialized, and that there's a different also excuse that happens when you do credentialize, you do recognize it as higher ed, then it becomes a excuse for Ron, for Cheryl, for the students who are allies and employees of the organization, now as a full-time university student, to have an excuse to carve out an extra 10 hours in a week to do something that is both